This is the ecoChristian podcast, where we're exploring what it means to be Christian on planet Earth. I'm your host, Caleb Cray Haynes. It seems like everybody and their mama is getting some snow around these parts. I'm curious, where are you at? I'd love to know where you're listening from and what February. I've always not quite known how to say that. What it's been like for you. Drop me an email. I'd love to hear from you. Also, have you guys heard about this fast? It's like this big fast that people are doing at the end of the month. There's like a 3-day fast happening on February 29th, 30th, and 31st. Okay, sorry, I had to. That'll hit some of you guys later after it marinates. But on a serious note, speaking of fasting, the Christian season of Lent is almost upon us. And today we're going to be hearing from the Reverend Dr. Brit Bolerjack, my friend, and her new work just published called Earth for Lent. So good. We're dropping that in today's conversation. So hang on. But also, I wanted to share a couple of other great resources and opportunities for you and your church to engage with Earth during this season. First, our podcast partners over at Rocha USA recently released a worship and creation care guidebook, they're calling it. And this right here, this is what we've been needing. I really feel like it's a thoughtful collection of prayers, songs, laments, benedictions, blessings, reflections, and more. And it's designed to help integrate the call to care for God's creation into the communal worship space a little bit more. And so, y'all, it's another just free download, a click away. We're just giving it to you, guys. And so check that out. This, I'm sure, will be a great tool for your community or just for your personal use. Whether you're focusing on creation care in the Lenten season or you want to source this for different times around the year, check it out. I'll link it below. And also, one other freebie opportunity that I just can't pass up sharing to you guys, and I kind of just stumbled upon it, but partnering with Rocha Canada and several other organizations, the Climate Witness Project has queued up a really great looking 5-week series over Zoom. It actually starts like tonight, February 19th, but it runs through March 19th. And so I would encourage you to just jump in where you can. But this series will feature guest leaders sharing their expertise and perspectives on the vital intersection of faith, our relationship with creation, our response to food and climate justice. So it looks really good. So do it if at all you can. Okay. Take a breath. Let's get in it. Hey, friends. I'm with my good friend, Brit Bolerjack, who is all up in here. And some of you, I hope, and I think that you're already going to know, and she will have a familiar voice for you, as she was the long-running host of This Nazarene Life podcast that went for so many epic seasons. So if you're of the Nazarene family, and you haven't ever dug into that, it's still out there in the world, right?
Yeah, it is.
Awesome. So good. So, yes. And for others of you, this may be a new one. But with me today is the one and only Reverend Dr. Brit Bolerjack. And welcome, friend. What's up?
Aw, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, y'all, I've had the privilege of co-laboring with Brit for the work of creation care off and on for many years now, I'd say, right? I mean, we've been like scheming together for a bit.
Yeah.
And no one really knows this, but I'm just gonna crack that can open right now, that it was like in 2018, we chatted a little bit because When I was drawing up plans for my garbage theology book, I actually hit up Brit. I was like, we could co-author this. Do you remember that at all?
Yes, and I was like,
Okay,
"Oh,
yeah,
I love it,"
yeah.
and I'm slammed, and I
Yeah, it just didn't work out, but,
yeah.
yeah, we've been scheming together for a while, so I'm really excited, for you guys to hear some more about what she's up to today. So, yeah, so Britt is the pastor/farmer at Heirloom East Bay. She's especially passionate about, the community, animals, native plants, and even weeding, and she graduated with a master's in theology from NTC Manchester back in the day, and a place close to my heart because I went there as well. And with her doctorate of ministry in land, food, and faith formation from Memphis Theological Seminary just last year. And that was just, man, that's such a good program. I've heard so many good things about that program.
Oh, it was so good.
Yeah. And so now she's in Castro Valley, California with her husband, Aaron, and their daughter and all. Yeah, and not to mention, she one of her claim to fames is like beginning the Young Clergy Network movement as well. So you've done some things.
Yeah, I've been around the block a
You've
couple of times.
been around the block,
Yeah.
saving the world a couple times around. So Brit's out milking cows and stuff now. Actually,
No,
I
not
don't know.
no
You guys have
cows.
cows, do you? You've
Just
got goats.
goats. Yeah, we have
Yeah.
goats, sheep, chickens, and a llama.
Do you guys like make goat cheese or anything like that?
We make goat's milk soap. We sell it at the farm stand on our
Mm.
property. But that's like the only like oh well, and we sell eggs. And we did once do an art night where we made like little felted pouches from our llama's wool, which was super
Ooh,
fun.
that
But we
sounds
didn't
really cool.
sell that. That was just like for fun.
Yes. So cool. But you're not making, like, fruit cake or anything yet?
No, we don't
No.
have any value-added products at the farm stand right
Okay.
now. So
Yeah, I just that's how you know that you've crossed over into, like, monastic farm situation is,
yeah,
when you're
yeah,
producing your own fruit cakes. So, shout out to the Abbey of Gethsemane because if anyone's ever wants some good fruit cake from some monks, that's where you gotta go. So
love it.
yeah, random thing. So of all the things we could be chatting about, and maybe we will, but the season of Lent is happening, y'all, and in just a few weeks we'll be in sackcloth and ashes. And Britt here has just gotten published her work called Earth for Lent, and it's a 6-week guide. It's so good. And so off the bat, that's a great resource for all you listening if you don't already have plans for the Lenten season. But before we kind of get into the nitty gritty of that, I'd love if maybe we just take a minute and for others to hear more about you and your eco-Christian life trajectory and sort of what kind of, led you here to this moment a little bit.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in our denomination, the Church of the Nazarene. And I really fell in love with trees as a small child when I was kind of 6 or 7 years old, climbing trees and finding my safe spaces in trees. And when I was in first grade, one particular tree that I dearly loved was cut down. And I feel like that was sort of the pivotal moment for me to be like, oh, I'm saving real things like my friends
Mm,
here. So like it's like really important that I
mm,
um not be part of the problem.
yeah.
And then many other things happened. I saw an Inconvenient Truth in 2008, and at the time I was pretty politically conservative, and like it felt like pretty new information to me my senior year of college or after graduation. Um and so that sort of started my like climate change concern, global warming, what are we doing about this kind of
Mm,
moves. And then I spent a lot of time trying to be zero waste, reducing my individual footprint. I thought that's what I was supposed to do. um you know Cloth diapering our kid for the first 2 years, all that kind of stuff. um
mm,
and since then have kind of moved into a place where I feel more called to this sort of like community activism and
mm,
advocacy, trying to understand what to do beyond my personal footprint and helping people with their personal footprints, which I
mm,
think is important work, but like it's not all the work.
Yeah.
And so I've really pivoted my focus to like mobilizing us is Christians, in the work of planet saving, because it's necessary, important work. And so I got my degree in land, food, and faith formation from Memphis Theological Seminary. And as part of that, this sort of capstone is a project, like a physical thing that you kind of put out into the world. And we could do any number of things. But I was really drawn to the idea of doing something for Lent because I feel like Lent is already a time when we as Christians sort of expect to be challenged, expect to do things outside of our comfort zone, stretch ourselves, find ourselves in, tackling something new and
Mm,
different. We sort of expect it to be hard in some capacity. Um, and I wanted to help people understand that if we want to save the planet for future generations, that work is
mm,
hard. That work is not
mm,
just um, changing out our toothbrush, although it's important if you can to change out your toothbrush.
mm,
That work is uh, ongoing. So I
mm,
wanted to create something that someone could do multiple Lenten seasons and still get something out of it, and feel like they're being stretched every time into a new space, learning something new every time, getting something different out of it every time. So what I ended up with is Earth for Lent. And it's basically a Lenten curriculum. It's ideal for small groups because we're all in this together. Going it alone is actually pretty hard. There are five sort of, I'm sort of presenting them as challenges. Like you can pick one of these five challenges. And so that's sort of like your homework, for lack of a better word. That's your Lenten practice. And then surrounding that Lenten practice, we're gathering every week for prayer and meditation and educational tidbits and really fostering a sense of community, trying to understand why creation is important to you, what part of creation is important to you, how might you fight for that part of creation. Um, if whether it's birds or trees or a specific lake that you have fallen in love with, kind of like hone in on what you love and then choose to take action for that piece or that creature or that view, to preserve it for future generations. So I did Earth for Lent, 2 Lents in a row, with two different kind of cohorts of people. A handful did it twice. And it was just really great. I was able to like modify the curriculum both years, based on feedback and kind of really understand group dynamics and how things work well or don't work well in groups. Um, Using the circle way framework for shared responsibility of group culture was really important to me so that there wouldn't be one person whose idea it is to have this group and then suddenly they're tasked with like leading, and answering all the questions and like having all the answers. Like that doesn't make any sense. None of us have all the answers.
mm.
So to really like create something
Yeah.
that somebody could pick up with no, prior knowledge or experience and help facilitate a group of people to go through it together without feeling the pressure of like, if I'm not perfect, how do I
Mm,
lead a group like this? Well, you don't. We're all in this together. But it is based on the premise that people who are going through it buy into climate change. And towards the end of my work, I began labeling these people as climate convinced Christians. And one of the things that Catherine Hayhoe says in a lot of her work is like, we can get caught up in changing the minds of people who are not convinced of climate change and spend our whole lives doing that. And at the end of the day, maybe we've changed some hearts or minds, but we haven't saved anything. So instead, perhaps some of us or many of us might pivot and focus our efforts on people who already buy into climate change and mobilize their belief. Because I think that's what I was hearing prior to writing this in my work a lot was people who being like, I believe in climate change. I want to do something about it. Where do I start? What do I do? And so this was really created
mm,
to help people
mm.
who are climate convinced do something about it and line up their actions with their values in more significant ways.
Yeah, so good. I feel that so much, and that's a tension. I know we were just talking about like going back and forth between how much of your bandwidth is, is going to which group of people, quote unquote, if we want to sort of like put it in boxes like that. And yeah, it's a lot to marinate on if you're going to like spend bandwidth and energy and time and resources on, trying to help the world. And yeah, I love that so much. And you said so many things there, and even mentioning cloth diapers, I was like, I just had like brief like PTSD flashbacks. Y- it's just like, man, and after 2 kids and, and I tell people all the time, it's like, I think the only way that I made it through all that was because of like, it was because of my faith, because no sheer amount of force or will, I think, would have, like, other than Jesus, would have gotten us through it, you know what I'm saying? Like, that it's like, because I believe that, because, like, I believe what we do matters and that, like, diapers are just so bad for the world, and so I think it's those little things that it's very helpful to really unpack, pull out, look at the effects of, and talk about that juxtaposition between what I personally can control and do and my own personal footprint, and then the larger narrative of climate change and these environmental issues that just feel so gargantuan and beyond our control. And and sort of struggle with that tension. And, I think that we want these sort of quick black and white binary answers for creation care, quote unquote. But that's just not how it works, right? Which is kind of no surprise because that's not how the world works. That's not how ecosystems work. It's involved, right? It's atomic. And so, yeah, that's really cool. Also, I know that part of your story kinda goes back to, one of your claims to fame. I don't know if you still use the handle, but I remember you used the one handle, it
Oh
was
yeah.
like, like
Yeah, yeah.
low waist bread or whatever. Yeah, and I one of the things I've heard you talk about that I love it when you talk about is, I can't remember how long, it was 40 days or longer, you did this, like,
Yeah.
zero waste personal challenge, and when you do something like that, I think what you, like, ended up with, like, a jar, of trash or something after that, which is nuts. Anyway, but you learned so much through that. What is that kind of, like, part of what you're bringing and part of, that experience that was able to kind of fuel, this book?
Yes. So in January of 2018, I challenged myself to go 30 days without producing any waste. And at that point, I was already like making my own toothpaste, using a bamboo toothbrush, using, various low waste or compostable alternatives. And so I thought to myself, you know what? What if I just see like how I could kind of go about this? And so I did. I challenged myself for 30 days and I documented, I took a photo a day of various things that I was doing. Um, and uh, like some of those habits stuck. Like I still use, like coffee tumblers, and my car crate is kind of my claim to fame. I could be an evangelist for the car crate, but basically it's a crate that you keep in your car with all your reusables so that you always have them when you're out and about.
I
Um,
thought so many times, like, how has this not been, like, created and, like, packaged and I think that's kinda anti the
yeah,
idea because the whole idea is
yeah,
scrappy, but at the same time, like, just, like, it's a little yeah, like a milk crate in the back of your car with
yep.
everything you need all the time.
Exactly. Yes. And it has to-go containers and canvas bags and, bulk bin bags and tumblers and all that kind of stuff. So if you, need to stop at a coffee shop, you're ready to go. But a lot of what I learned in that challenge was to see the world with new eyes. So I didn't walk away from that challenge going from low waste Brit to zero waste Brit. Like that was not the point. I walked away from that challenge being aware, so much more aware of my use of single-use disposable items. And so that's what I think a challenge does for us. It's not because I want somebody to, um, you know, do one of these 5 challenges and walk away and do those 5 challenges for the rest of their life. Like, would that be great? Sure. But what I hope you get out of a challenge like this is an awareness you didn't have before. So like for example, this year I have decided to go 12 months and attempt to purchase nothing new. I'm calling it Nothing New Year.
Mm,
And I'm only buying used things or getting used things or trading for used things. I cannot like purchase new things this year, or at least I'm attempting to go 12 months without purchasing new things. And I'm like, 6 weeks, 6+ weeks into this challenge, and it's not that I don't think I will ever buy anything new after this year. It's that my eyes are
mhm,
already hugely opened to a lot of issues that I didn't see before. Because if you're attempting to buy everything used, it's a slower process. It's a human process. I have to find someone who's
mhm,
done with that thing and retrieve it from them, either by driving somewhere because I got it on Facebook Marketplace, or getting in the mail because I got it on eBay, or giving up because I can't find a used
mm,
version of the thing I'm looking for, making my own because I can't find a used version of what I'm looking for.
mm,
So, it's my way. I think I was looking for a way to reevaluate my relationship to consumption, and capitalism and companies that I'm bothered by. And this was my way of saying, you know what if I just opt out? Like, what if I just attempt for a year, um, to isolate what I'm doing to, things that have already existed? And the truth is, like,
mm.
so many things already exist. um,
Yeah.
and I said this in one of my YouTube video recaps about it, but I read this book called Made from Scratch by Jenna, oh, what is her last name? Woganrich, I think. And it's a cute little memoir. And she's basically like I call it eco hobbies. She has a lot of eco hobbies.
Okay.
Um, like things that you do that are not like necessarily um big impact things,
Yeah.
but that you enjoy doing. So she's in her book, she's using a lot of non-electric appliances like a hand grinder and all this kind of
Mm,
stuff. Like she's got a lot of these like things that she's doing for herself.
yeah.
But one of the things was that she attempted to not buy new things. And part of it worked for her because she's like super into the vintage aesthetic. I don't know that I am necessarily. But anyway, as one of the like stories that she tells, one of the many stories that she tells about it, she needed, I think, a cheese grater. And instead of purchasing a cheese grater, she went antiquing and found a cheese grater and took it home and then had a cheese grater. And I was really drawn to this. I must have read this book a long time, like it's probably been 6 or 8 years ago.
Mm,
But it just so happened a few years after reading that book, I myself needed a cheese grater. And that was the first time, maybe 5 years ago, that I needed something and made a conscious decision to go, for me, it was thrifting. I didn't go antiquing. But
yeah.
I literally found the exact cheese grater I was hoping for at the first thrift store I went to. And I was
Wow.
like, oh, things are already in the world. Like
Yes.
things exist. And if I want a four-sided box grater with 3 different sizes, I can probably go to a thrift store and pick one up. So for me, that was the first moment of like, oh, this
Mm,
this could work. And so when I was trying to decide what to do for myself this year, I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess, because I just finished my book, and I just finished my degree, and I don't, I needed I'm ADHD, so I guess I just needed something to like,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
sparkleize my attention for a year. But um
Yeah.
like I landed on this, and and I'm already learning some good lessons, and I
Mm,
am more active on my buy nothing group. And I'm making a list of things on my phone that I would like to purchase, and realizing like half those things I want to purchase them because I lost the previous one. So like maybe the
mm.
lesson I'm learning is to take more care of my things, question mark, or buy some air tags, or I'm not sure what that part is.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think part of that too is that we have so many things today at this point in history. Like
Yeah.
we have more belongings than anyone at any point in history, and the idea of keeping track of all these little things is just absurd, really, when you think about it.
Yeah.
But man, that's so cool. I love the intentionality and the commitment of these things for you and the zero waste and the framing of the no new things, man, I think that that's so good, and I think that's what it's gonna require, and I think that's why I love this workbook that you made is because it's gonna take something intentional. It's gonna take this, like, period of time, which I think is important to say, let's set a time, 30 days, 40 days, a year of, like, this commitment. Let's go into covenant with this, and do it with people, and that's what's gonna help us get there,
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, like, we're not trying to learn perfection. Like, perfection's kinda the enemy of this. Like, we're not gonna be perfect, you know, even the greenest, quote, person on the planet still has a footprint, like, because we're humans, and humans have footprints, right? So, it's just part of what it means to breathe out carbon in the world. But it's like, what are these habits? How can we try this on? And so I was just thinking about when you were talking, I was thinking about my trash hauling days, and I guess inadvertently we kind of like did that as well, but kind of for the opposite reasons, is because I was just coming home with, like, so much stuff every day that I was like, "Oh, we could totally use this," or "I'm not gonna throw this out," or "Maybe we'll find another home for it," and, inadvertently, like, because like you were saying, there's just so much stuff already in the world, and, when we went to clean out a property after, an eviction or rebuild or whatever it was, man, you're just like, I always think about, like, every street in my neighborhood. Each of these homes has all of these things inside and more, and it spills out into the yard, and it's just like, there's just so much stuff already. So, man, I
Mhm.
think that that's a really cool, and I'm gonna say, spiritual practice of drawing close to the earth, and how, taking care of the earth is gaining that awareness there, and this idea of, like, hey, maybe fix it, maybe thrift store it, and yeah, the same thing happened to me. I went to the Goodwill outlet, and I wasn't even looking for it. But I saw, we have this, like, so at my house we have this, like, salad shooter. This is totally a side story. That we had this salad shooter, and it's like this old 90s, like, appliance that my grandmother gave us, like, back in the day. I don't even know if you can buy them anymore, and we've loved this thing. Like, I've repaired this thing. We've been using it to, like, grate cheese and zucchini for, like, years. And I see one at the Goodwill outlet, and I, like, go berserk, and I'm trying to find all the pieces, and I couldn't find the last. Anyway, it was just like a moment. Yeah. I think the original cheese grater was just fingernails, wasn't it, back in the day?
Sure. Yeah.
People just scraping it off.
Mhm.
Sorry.
I think that's one of the gifts of community too, is like, you know, on at Heirloom East Bay, we live on 95 acres and there's, 13 of us on the property, and we share things in common. We have a community fund for a lot of our communal needs, and toilet paper, and staple foods, and we have one riding lawnmower for all of us. Like,
Mm,
we're able to kind of share resources and footprints, and you know, reduce our impact on the environment while living in community with one another,
mhm.
which has so many relational and social benefits as well. So it's
Yeah,
really a
yeah.
gift to be able to share space and not need one of everything per family unit all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, it's such a way to, like, reclaim that freedom. It's just sharing things in the world, and sort of like, I'm gonna say, quote unquote, sticking it to the man. Of just like, look, and of course they're finally figuring out how to stop us from sharing our Netflix passwords, but they can't stop us from sharing our lawnmowers.
That's
And
right.
one of the things we're building in our cul-de-sac right now is a tool sharing shed, and,
Ooh,
yeah, I'm really excited about it. So, yeah, all the things. So,
that's awesome.
back to what we're talking about, back to your book. You mentioned talk to me about the framework a little bit, and you mentioned the circle way framework, and just this, like, tell us a little bit about that process for those not familiar with that, and sort of what your hopes are for some of that.
Yeah, so the circle way is a I didn't develop it. It's a framework. by some two women. I can't remember their names off the top of my head. Just doing work to help communities move forward together, especially in shared spaces. Um, so the kind of idea is that each week, one person in the group would offer to kind of be a facilitator, but that we would all be conscious and responsible for group culture. And what do I mean by that? I mean by that, like, if someone starts sharing about something inappropriate or goes on for 10 minutes about something, it's not just the facilitator's job that week to say something. It's everyone's job. We are all responsible for group culture and safety. And so it's
Mm.
sort of a way to like equalize facilitation rather than feeling like this kind of top down, oh, well, I guess it was fine because so and so didn't address it and they're the facilitator this week. It's like, no, 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 that weight is on all of our shoulders. And I think when it comes to climate change specifically, there can be hard moments. And we are all responsible for like maintaining a safe and empathetic and compassionate space where we can treat each other's stories with grace, believe the best about each other, and approach these sensitive topics with equity and care for one another. And so that's really what the Circle Way is, just a really simple way to allow groups to feel like they are co-equally responsible for the care of one another and for the discussion itself.
Mm.
Because at the end of the day, like, we are all humans attempting to live on this planet. We have far more in common than divides us. And especially if you're in this kind of group, like you probably are all members of, a Christian faith of some kind or another. Maybe everybody already buys into most of the tenets of climate change and is concerned about it. So there's like a lot of things that we can stand on. But
Mm.
someone in the group who's an avid hunter and cares about the planet is going to have a completely different approach than someone who's a vegan and cares about the planet. So we are all going to be approaching these things from very different places at times. And
Mm.
so we need a way forward to kind of say, what will this group be like?
Mm.
And I think the Circle Way does that because, sometimes in small group settings, especially if you're, at a smaller church or you're a part of like a women's ministry or something, it can be super intimidating to be the person who's, quote, in charge of the group. It can be, you can feel inadequate if you're not an expert in the topic. I didn't want somebody to not want to facilitate at their church because they use a bunch of plastic or have never thought about the environment. Like, I wanted this to be super accessible for people. And you can't do that if you feel like there's a lot of pressure on you, the facilitator, to make this work and make it great and make it authoritative and have all the answers. Like, that just doesn't, that's not going to happen. So
Uh,
it was just a way to kind of, um, break up shared responsibility so that it can be used in more context rather than just like at a church where someone's in charge of the green team and like really passionate about this stuff and like they
mm.
can facilitate this book, but I can't because I don't know enough. So it's like you can
Yes.
facilitate this at a church or in a small group where none of us has many answers or all the answers.
Mm.
And that's what I like about the Circle Way.
That's so important. I really appreciate that. I think too often we get really good content with no rules. It's kind of one way to think about it, I think. And it's just like, okay, here you go. And yeah, I think that really helps give a safety to the
Yeah.
conversation, which I think is really important to say. And, one of the things that I like to do in studies sometimes is just like, okay, let's all make a pact right now that there are no dumb questions and that there's you like we're like let's just all be like vulnerable humans here. And because especially in the earth care conversation, right? There's someone over here might have like done a lot of reading and research, and someone over here just might like this is our first time talking about it, and that's
Yeah.
okay. We're gonna bring all that together and, yeah, I really appreciate that. And, yeah, I think how this book is designed seems, it's obviously really good. And I think one of the connections that you did is sort of this um, on and off between kind of like what we love and our action. And you talk about these sort of like, there's like these fall in love sections next to these like talk about it sections and action sections. So, Yeah, tell us a little bit more about your thought there and what's underneath that.
Yeah, so in working on my doctoral research, I really came to love and appreciate Catherine Hayhoe's approach. And she essentially approaches it by saying, in a survey of lots of people about climate change, what percentage of them actually had a conversation in the last year about climate change? And the percentage was very low. Most people said they had not ever or uh, very infrequently brought up the topic of climate change. And the truth is, at the end of the day, like every climate solution, every organization saving the planet, everything that you value and admire in the world started with a conversation. So if we are not talking about climate change and climate action and environmental justice, none of those things will spin off. And so the conversation is like one of the most important pieces. But what do you have a conversation about? And it turns out it's like really hard to fall in love with an entire planet or an entire environment or the molecules of the atmosphere. What we love and what we end up talking about is a lot more granular than that. So a lot of the meditations in the book are designed to help you think about what was your first connection to nature? What was an animal that had a big impact on you? And really hash out in a group, like, where did this interest start for you? What do you love? How will you save it? So
Mm,
for me, what I kind of came away with from Catherine Hayhoe's work over the last 3 years is we got to fall in love, we got to talk about it, and we've got to think about our next steps. And if we can keep doing that, get in rhythm of falling in love and talking about it and keeping up with some next steps, like this is the sort of cyclical nature of environmental work. And
mm,
when I say fall in love, you can fall in love with a population of people that are hurting. You fall in love with a species of bird, a specific tree, a view, whatever, like find what it is about creation that you love. Because if you say, I love the planet or I love the environment, those words don't carry a lot of weight. You can't really
mm,
fight for a whole planet or care
mm,
about a whole environment. Like, you need to do the work in yourself and kind of hone in on what it is that you're trying to do in the world.
mm,
Um, and then talk about that thing with your friends, with your family. And if it's intimidating to talk about it with climate deniers, focus on people who are already probably on your side and just don't know what to do with their next steps either. So by talking about it, we come up with next steps. We develop solutions. We join organizations when we talk to
mm,
those communities. And so the talking about it can help you take your next steps, can lead you to the right next steps, can lead you to other people who are already on that path, and then
mm,
take your next action. And I really encourage people in the book, like, the vast majority of us do not need to start a new project or a new nonprofit. We need to connect with the communities already doing the work for the thing that we're trying to save, because chances are you do not need to reinvent the wheel. A lot of these things are already being worked on. So you need to fall in love and you need to talk about it. You need to find your people and plug in and take action. So that kind of like 3-step process is really what I have been personally like encouraging people towards.
mm.
And so I wanted to use the fall in love and talk about it framework because I think that's so powerful. What Dr. Hayhoe has sort of isolated as the problem is that we don't have the seeds of action because we're not talking about it.
Mm,
And then the kind of take action piece, I spread out in almost every week, 5 of the 6 weeks, um, macro solutions, because I feel like a lot of times we focus on the composting and the recycling and the gardening and all of these things I do and I love and I'm passionate about. But I wanted to give people a toolbox of things they could do to have bigger impacts and
mm.
not just, kind of focus inward, but like the reach out, the divestment, the, fighting for
Yeah.
justice, the bigger things that you can tackle, because I felt like that was the information I was missing when I started on this
Mm,
journey, was like, yeah, but I'm doing XYZ, but I don't feel like I'm making a difference. And it turns out to
mhm,
feel like you're making a difference, you have to join a community making these bigger impact differences.
Mm,
So in almost all of those like suggestions, I point people to an organization, already doing the work, because I think it's really important to like find those people and connect with those groups, and then spend your time and your energy and your money and
mm.
resources there, as often as you can. So,
Yeah. That's really good. Because I think we can like spin our wheels often when we think about like caring for the earth, and people come and talk to me all the time about recycling. And, y'all, I'm just so over recycling. Like, I recycle, sure. Like, it's like autopilot. I don't got to think about it. I just recycle. But it does its thing. You should do it. But in comparison to like saying, these bigger actions, there's other things. Like, if all the quote unquote earth care bandwidth you have goes to recycling, stop recycling and go do this other thing
yeah.
that takes an equal amount of bandwidth that will have a far greater impact, if that makes sense. And and
Yes.
and so that's really beautiful. I love you sort of like drawing that out because that's so important to name. And yeah. And then, earlier, as you're talking about the generic versus the particular, man, that's just I love that conversation because I think that so often the generic is just like the enemy of creation care. I feel like we're in a time that because we're just more and more on screens, more and more drawn inside, more and more of these barriers between us and the quote unquote world outside, that the earth gets gets a little more generic, and so much of this is like, hey, like, come on out and like
Yeah.
like dig into the particulars of it. And that's one of my favorite books with Norman Wirsba, The Sacred Life. I know I've talked about it on here before, but he really gets into that, and it's just so good to talk about like you got to name the layers and the skin and the funny features and
Mhm.
the curves and silhouettes of the thing, because that's what makes the thing the thing. It's anyway, get into the weeds, but yeah, I really appreciate that movement that you're saying there, from
Mm.
love to talking about it to these practices. And because man, I'm just yeah, you got my wheels turning just talking about it more. And so that's really good. I'm wondering if you have or if there's some practices you mentioned in the book that are maybe like or maybe like a favorite one that you'd be willing to share. Or
Sure.
obviously we can't reveal them all, like that. You got to get behind the paywall, people. But maybe like one that like you really appreciate, or stands out with you.
I'll give you two. But when I first started the, kind of workbook that became the book, one of the practices was pick up every piece of trash you come across for the entire season of Lent,
Mm,
and attempt to dispose of those like well. Um, and it was really cute at the time. I had a 1-year old, when I first started writing. And so I, of course, did this all of Lent, because you got to practice what you preach. And she, towards the end of Lent, when we would go on, walks in the evening around the neighborhoods, she learned to say, "Uh-oh, trash, mama get it." And it was just like anytime we came across a piece of trash, she knew, even in her like 1.5-year-old self, that like we were gonna pick it up and we were gonna take it home, and
mm,
we were gonna throw it away or recycle it or whatever.
yep.
Since then, I have tried to limit the scope of some of these challenges, so they're a little more like that one in particular became, pick a day each week that you will pick up every piece of trash you come across. And so you're not necessarily on the hook for 40 days of litter pickup,
Yeah.
but like, kind of isolate that a little bit to make it more doable for people.
Mm,
um, and then one of the things that I encourage the group to do, is to incorporate nature somehow into the group setting. So Claudio Carvalles, a professor in Colombia, had a service of, I think, lament, for creation and our wounds, the way that our woundedness. for creation. And he encouraged his students to bring plants, and they set up just this gorgeous array of plants and rocks and water, and they really brought creation kind of into the space, and then were able to have this service of lament to this thing that was like real and right there. And I think sometimes we talk about creation as a like third thing far away from us that exists, outside of us and is not in this room. When the truth is like creation is all around us. We are creation. Everything that we do and live and breathe is part of creation. And so we tend to forget our createdness, and our intricate like links to all this stuff. And so one of the things that I did in the book was like encourage groups to either figure out how to bring nature into the space or like just physically meet outside. We did
Mm.
not do that. At the time of writing, I lived in Oklahoma, and Oklahoma was not like super habitable during the Lenten season outside. Um, and so we did not meet outside. But if it helps, like have people bring, a favorite rock or a stick or, something that reminds them of their like sacred spaces, and bring those kind of into the group. And then there's like, there's more of the actual challenges are like, find one cause per week and figure out how to get involved and all this kind of stuff. Most of the challenges now I've isolated down to like once a week and kind of put a time, a suggested like piece of time. How long is this homework going to take you? And then I also kind of have a disclaimer at the end that's like, it actually takes bandwidth capacity to do some of these things. And like,
Mm.
if you don't have capacity in this season, like, don't shame yourself for not taking on a Lenten practice. Like, commit to showing up to the group as your Lenten practice. So it's not that you can't do Earth for Lent, even if you're not doing one of the like five suggested
Mm.
practices, like Lenten practices. You can do Earth for Lent as a small group together.
Hmm. That's that's really good and encouraging. And I think, there are so many things like that and even thinking about like walking down the street, seeing trash, picking it up. It's one of those things like we've all done it, and then the thought crosses your head like somebody else gonna get that. I don't have time. Where am I gonna put that? And I think really if we pause, I call it like the driving down the road factor. Like you see someone like broken down or something, and so like there's like the thought process of like, oh, they probably have a cell phone. Someone's coming to help them. Like
Yeah.
I'm going somewhere else right now, so I can't stop
Mm-hmm.
here. And it's always funny to think about because there is no scenario in which you're on the road in your car and, like and not going somewhere. Like, we're all going somewhere, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's like and it's the harder thing to let it stop you, to let it change your routine, like, and it goes back to the first thing that you said, right? That, "Hey, like, this may not be easy." In fact, it's not gonna be easy, and, but it can become easier as these new things become habits and
Mm-hmm.
like, gets reshaped into part of the DNA, like, is Brit Bolerjack today completely zero waste? No, but like you are much like, like we're different because we've been formed by these things that we practiced.
Yeah.
Right. Will you ever buy a new thing again? We don't know yet, but you might have to at some point. And so there's all of these factors. Yeah. So I wonder here, right at the end, if you'd be up for, I'd love for listeners to hear just a minute about heirloom, if you'd be
Oh,
up for
sure.
that. Yeah, maybe just for those who aren't familiar, like, tell us just a snippet about what heirloom East Bay is, and maybe even like what has pastor farming been teaching you.
Mm. Yeah, so Heirloom East Bay is a project of the Church of the Nazarene in the East Bay of San Francisco, California, and we're on 95 acres. We are primarily an intentional community, but we also host a church plant on Sunday nights called Supper Church, and grow food and sell eggs and goat's milk soap from our goats. And we have some like classes for toddlers that meet on site. We have workshops. We're doing a sourdough workshop this weekend. We host, the occasional birthday party or baby shower and fun stuff like that. But we also do have like bigger events for the community to meet animals and learn about plants and fall in love with nature. And our kind of mission, our core is hospitality, sustainability, and creativity, and just creating a space for people to fall in love with God, themselves, others, and creation through this space, this place. And so I really feel like my degree and this project, this book in particular, like fit really well with the kind of work that I'm doing in the world physically on the ground.
Mm.
Um, Spending a lot of time with animals and troubleshooting farm systems and trying to make things better and more efficient and cleaner and healthier for the creatures, and
Mm.
plant a lot of native plants and um,
Yeah.
you know, being mindful and composting and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's been a really great. I really feel like in this space, I'm able to integrate my love for creatures and creation and my love for people as pastor and kind of weave both of those together, which has been really cool and beautiful. Um,
Mm.
yeah, and then we have
That's
a
great.
few families that join us for Sunday night supper church at 5:30. It's on the lawn when it's nice outside, but it's also on the sun porch when it's cold outside.
Yeah.
Um, and we do a lot.
Yeah.
We try to integrate the kiddos into our worship and form them in the way of Jesus. So it's a fun little project.
And can I say, am I allowed to say that you guys allow people to kind of come and visit for short periods?
Yes, yes, we do. We operate sort of a micro, I call it a micro retreat center. We have at any given time, we have like 3 to 4 guest rooms available for people to take retreat here at Heirloom. So people will come. We have some pastors that come through for their quarterly sermon planning retreat or just a silent retreat for themselves. You have the opportunity to participate in prayer times or house
Mm.
meetings or supper church while you're here. Just really integrate yourself into the community because the rooms are in the house, in the main house.
Mm.
And it's been such a gift to host clergy. We have started a fund um, to try to fund one of our rooms for 365 nights so that anyone could come for retreat and take space for
Mm.
themselves. That's our Soil and Sabbath fund, and we take applications already. We did 8 weeks last year, and we raised for 16 this year.
Mm.
So people can apply to stay for free at Heirloom. Normally it's 75 or so per night.
Sure.
Um, but you can apply to stay for free for up to 3 weeks through our Sabbath 365 program. So yeah, just creating
Awesome.
space for people and ministers and people going through deconstruction or reconstruction or hard times in general to just be able to plug in and engage in the many analog activities of farm life. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. That's come taste and see. That's what's
yeah,
up. Ah,
exactly.
so good. Well, and I'm excited for whatever book happens next. I'm thinking like farming for Lent or I feel like there's so
Yeah.
much low-hanging fruit here. Let's see. You got Earth for Life maybe, that would,
Yeah, I got a couple of
uh
different things rolling around. Thinking about a book, Earth for Pentecost. I don't know. We'll see how that one
Ooh.
goes.
Yes.
But also thinking about a working title right now, the Wesleyan Pentagon, reclaiming creation as a pillar of our God understanding, because I feel like
Mm.
we could take this sort of quadrilateral, colloquial understanding of how we understand God and faith and ourselves, and broaden that just a little bit so that it's not so people centric. So
Wow, my word.
we'll see how that goes.
Let's put a pin in that, make that a podcast, because that's a conversation right there. That's so
Yeah,
good.
hopefully that one is a collaborative effort because I really do not um, want to engage in another
Yeah.
big project alone. So we'll see how it goes.
Yes.
I'm building
Yes.
community on all fronts, really.
Well, thanks for taking a minute out of the middle of your day, farming and parenting and all the things to share with us. I'm really excited for people to learn about Earth for Lent. And any last words you'd like to share with us?
No, I'm just so grateful for being here. I hope people get to check out the book and look up Heirloom East Bay and check out our work and come visit us.
Absolutely. We'll put all that good stuff in the show notes. And all this. You can't make this stuff up. As always, if you want to see this podcast do well, share it with somebody. This podcast is for average, regular humans like you and me, not just the nerdy eco people, but those Christians living around Earth places. So if you know some people like that, help on-ramp them into this important work that we're doing here. Share this episode. It makes for great birthday presents and all the things. Yeah. Grace and peace, friends. Until next time.